On page 120, the colossal, Derrida writes, "That which always forms itself anew economimesis only to close up again, nonetheless leaves an embouchure each time. The end of economimesis opened onto water put in the mouth, as if any system that attempts to be pure and closed possesses at its most critical boundary an opening that it cannot fully control, but that is self-deconstructing." Derrida thus continues, "And yet between the Greek kolossos and the columna or columen of the Romans, a sort of semantic and formal affinity exerts an irresistible attraction. The trait of this double attraction is all the more interesting because it has to do with, precisely, the double, and the one, the colossus, as double."
Colossus is supposed to be a statue, or something look like a statue that they erected, larger than life. That's the common definition you will find. But here mentioning it has nothing to do with the size, whether it's large or small. And also, Derrida mentions the word double. Whenever you read things like this, you really have to seek the whole background. If you go word by word, you're going to have a hard time to grasp the true meaning. And most likely you get stuck. That is kind of a reading habitual pattern for English readers. You go word by word, you want everything to be precise. And of course, English language does have that sort of feature, let's say, if we say it's a trait, because we encounter so many problems with German and French in the translation. Particularly, we have some hard time with Kant's terms that are translated in English. Well, part of it is the conceptual view of things, that certain concepts that the Germans have are different from what we have. But I believe there's a bigger part of that is the fact is contributed by language itself. And of course, then Chinese has some other more profound issues in that sense. If we could read in French, our problem would be a little less, because now we're 2 steps behind. Derrida was trying every possible way to fit German ideas into French ideas. And now it's translated in English. We have to consider the German ideas and the French ideas, particularly what Derrida is trying to say. And also we have a little problem here because this translation itself, it's not probably the best translation. So we have layers of issues here. I guess my point is, do not get stuck with the word. Well, the word is in this text, but it's not what in your understanding, whatever that understanding of yours comes from. If you detach from that, and then you open mind, then you will be able to receive, or at least to understand some meanings here. Colossal is originated in Greek. Derrida made the comparison between colossals and columns. So you might wonder then, if colossals is a statue, then what the statue has anything to do with the column? Greek temples, some of the columns are made of human statues. This idea of a double is really an issue. The double and the one, the colossus, as double. We're reading part of the Baudrillard's book about the word simulacrum, where that was from. And that was also, I think, the earliest trace they can find in Latin in the early versions of the Bible, and also precisely or affirmatively was from Virgil's poem. But the trick with this word is simulacrum, plural simulacra, is not what you normally understand. It's a copy of something, it's a double of something, it's a ghost of something, or it's a shadow of something. Because if you go back and read Virgil's long epic, you will find that he picked this word specifically, because there were image, ghost, shadow, double, imagination, but he did not use any of those words. He used the word simulacrum. So the idea was that your hero was After the war, searching his lover or wife, he went through the whole depraved sites after the war, and he couldn't find her, and then finally he saw a simulacrum of his lover or wife. It was a pale, larger than size of life. But you see, this is the tricky part. It did not say it was her ghost or her shadow. It said it was a simulacrum. That must mean something else. Baudrillard particularly used this word simulacrum for something else. So here we have the clauses as a double. So these words are very tricky. And you need to really spend more time to figure out exactly what Derrida is trying to say here. And I think you can draw a parallel between Derrida's clauses with Baudrillard's simulacrum. I think you'll find something interesting there.
On page 122, Derrida writes, "Through the effigy, precisely and in the fictional space of representation, the dimension of the effigy itself would have the fictional effect of demeasuring. Then what would also ensure, more or less, in the effigy of a fantasy, the passage between the colossus and the column, between the colossos, the columen, and the columna." Derrida writes, "The opposition of the colossus and the column is not given to be immediately read as such in Kant's text, but it is nonetheless incontestable in the paragraph of the evaluation of the sizes of the things of nature, necessary to the idea of the sublime. Here, Kant is looking for an example of the sublime which would suit the critique of pure aesthetic judgment. It must therefore be distinct from teleological judgment insofar as this is rational judgment."
We know that Kant has two major concepts. One is the beautiful, the other is the sublime. We more or less dealt with the idea of beautiful. Now we're dealing with the sublime. Sublime, now it's the same problem. On one hand, they cannot produce the feeling of the sublime, or let us say super elevated. That's the sublime. But on the other hand, the sublime is a super elevation beyond itself. Something very powerful, something very overwhelming. It's overwhelming beyond itself. It's very abstract. I mean, that's the same kind of idea as what the beautiful is. To appreciate the beautiful, you have to detach from your emotion and your intellect. Then we encounter the sublime, the same problem here. We think sublime is something, let's say you go to Yosemite and you see the huge mountain range. Or you go to the redwood trees, the huge trees that are so big beyond your imagination. You think that's called the sublime. Actually, that's not quite, because sublime is a little more beyond that, or a little more abstract than that. And I think this small paragraph is the precise definition of what the sublime is. So let me read this one more time. Super elevation cannot be announced. It cannot be provoke us to an idea of it, motivate us to it, or arouse that idea except by the spectacle of a nature. To be sure, but a nature which has not been given form by the concept of any natural end. So if you see something very grandiose or very humongous, let's say, that's not sublime. It's an idea that it's not produced by its size. Let's put it that way. It continues, super elevation will be announced at the level of raw nature, a nature which no final or formal contour can frame, which no limit can border, finish, or define in its size. You see, that's the problem. So at the end, it's abstract, just like a beauty. If you apply to the same principle, if you want to truly appreciate the beauty, or the beautiful rather, you have to detach from your emotion and the knowledge to the idea of sublime. It's the same thing. You detach yourself completely from it, and then you'll get it. But at the same time, when you get it, it completely overwhelms you. And then at the moment, you know what that is. Do we know? I'm not sure about that. As you read, you begin to find that there is a little something curious here. What I found is that, think about it. Think about the idea of colossal. In general, we define colossal as a grand statue, something erect, rather something grand. It cannot be too big, or rather, it's too big. It's beyond our understanding. Well, not only beyond our understanding, it is beyond its own concept. It is repeated regularly and each time associated with a big. Kant adds, in fact, immediately afterward, that the presentation of a concept becomes difficult in its goal when the intuition of the object is almost too great to our power of apprehension. The question immediately again is that, but where then do we cut off? Where are we to delimit the trait of the almost too big? So it's a situation that we cannot make any decision, we cannot make any judgment from our own mind, emotionally or intellectually. Of course, very soon that the next paragraph, Derrida says, I skirt around it, give a couple of names. It says white mythology. In the margins, that's one of Derrida's books. The typical concept in that book is white mythology. And another one is called economicism. It's almost like mimesis is too big to use. How about we have an economic mimesis? He's playing with the words, but he's giving you some ideas here. Obviously, we're not reading the original text, but from the second-hand reading, I have not studied Kant's personal life, what happened to him. You get the idea of, it's almost like into some kind of physiological imagination. Don't know, but it's very powerful. I think it's very interesting that he writes this way. In fact, as you continue to read, you'll get that feeling what he's trying to do. The bottom line is that what Derrida writes, the beautiful and the sublime present a number of traits in common. They please by themselves. They are independent of judgments, of the senses, and of determinate logical judgments. They also provide a pretension to universal validity on the side of pleasure, to be sure, and not of knowledge. They both presuppose a reflexive judgment and appeal from their pleasing to concepts, but to intermittent concepts, hence to presentations, and to the faculty of presentation. If you somehow already have some idea or grasp some ideas about the beautiful, and that's how Sublime goes with it. Essentially, Derrida is attacking both the concepts. Listen to this paragraph that makes sense here, make everything more clear. One can hardly speak of opposition between the beautiful and the sublime. Opposition could only arise between the two determined objects, having their contours, their edges, their finitude. But if the difference between the beautiful and the sublime does not amount on opposition, it is precisely because the presence of a limit is what gives form to the beautiful. The sublime is to be found for its part in an object without form, and the without limit is represented in it or on the occasion of it, and yet gives the totality of the without limit to be thought. As if we can say the very abstract idea of beautiful regarding something small, and the very abstract concept of sublime regarding something bigger, something to the raw nature. There can be sublime in art if it is submitted to the conditions of accord with nature. If art gives a form by limiting or even by framing, there can be paragon of the beautiful, paragon of the colon, or paragon as colon. But there cannot be, it seems, be a paragon for the sublime. As if you catch these sentences, you should be able to get some sort of idea between the difference of the beautiful and the sublime. To me, it's the same thing. It's the traditional view that makes such a big deal about the Kantian concepts. People have been defining them for hundreds of years, still can't seem to get to a point. I think Derrida did a really good job here. You can see, I mean, it's an abstract idea versus a smaller abstract idea. What is the idea beautiful? A smaller abstract idea. What is the sublime? A greater abstract idea.